6 to 12 years old. And so I participated in that battle.
Oh, good. So what did you do? That looks like a lightning bolt that's coming down.
Well, I tried to explain them about how to use non-invasive methods in soil, really. So first I explained what electricity was, and so that's what. So I showed them actually in water when you add salt that the light goes on. Oh. So I made a small circuit with them, and then I showed at first the light.
That's a good idea. I like that. That's a great idea.
Undergrounds.
But it was nice actually. They did understand, because first of all I didn't realize the first time, because I did it several times to exercise. First time I didn't realize that I don't know what electricity is already. That's a very abstract concept actually. Yeah. So I wanted to explain them how to use it in soil, but I had to start with the very.
Oh, I like that. That really resonates. So at the IUGG this next summer, they're having a workshop, a day-and-a-half workshop with educators, maybe 50 to 75 educators. And what they're doing, they're asking for teams of people to get together and to put together something that would be, perhaps a module that anything from kindergarten through grade 12.
I would love to work on something like that. Yeah.
So we're actually planning to. So this is great. This is great. You can be part of the team.
Good.
So we're going to put in an application to see if it works. But I've got actually it's a son-in-law who's a high school teacher in science. Okay. And then our thought was that we tried to put together something about remote sensing. Get geophysics in, because geophysics is not a word that people really see in.
No, that's actually the project I was talking about. I would like to make some animated movies on geophysics, but really for kids.
And then we have a guy named Michael Lamoureux at the Pacific Institute of Mathematics, which is in this building, PIMS.
Okay. And
they're involved in a large Jupyter project to develop things from K through 12. And then, of course, Lindsay is a Jupyter. Sagi is real. And then we got Don and Thibault here. We've got we got a dream team. What?
A dream team.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, should we start or?
Yeah, we started already, like we recorded.
Where is everybody? Is Lindsay here? Is Sagi here?
Sagi, no news, and Lindsay said she's in another meeting, so she might join later. But
okay.
We started without her today.
Okay.
And Kevin, you can hear us?
Oh, hi, Kevin. I hear you said you were ill.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. I have a stomachache today, so I'm home. But I thought I'd come for the meeting. It looks interesting.
Nice. So today Sarah is going to present her research and also her goal for her stay at UPC with SimPEG. So it's very exciting to see what you are doing. I guess it's really different from what we've been all working here. So. Without more introduction, I will let the mic to you.
Okay, so I'm only going to talk really about the project I want to work on here, but I just made this first slide here. I'll maybe do it on full screen. Where is that full screen stuff here? Here, present. Yeah. So just so that you have an idea of other projects we are working on, and that And that, if you would want to get in touch about them, we could talk about it at another time, of course. So the 4 projects that are really actively running at the moment, so with people actually working on them, is eRoot. This is a project with 2 of my colleagues and 2 other PhD students, where we try to understand the impact of roots and root tissue and root connectivity and anisotropy on the electrical signature in soils. So that mainly involves ERT and IP signals, and then we do that with modeling and experimental approaches, mainly lab at the moment because it's really, really small scale. Then the second project is the CHAR project. That's about biochar, actually. So you know that there's a boom in the use and the research on biochar, but the problem is mainly, I think it's often very conceptual and still not very much used, and often even in Belgium, for example, it wouldn't make much sense to use biochar in agriculture for many different reasons we could discuss at some other point. But what we think is lacking a lot in this research is that we only have the possibility often to look at short-term effects of biochar. So typically people will apply biochar on soil, and then for maximum 3-4 years they can do some measurements and they can say something about the chemistry, the exchanges with that thing in the soil and so on.
I don't know.
So are you going to talk
Hey, do you know what biochar is?
No, so I was going to say, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Biochar is,
you know, for
yeah,
all these things, you can go into a bit more detail.
So biochar is like some kind of it's like charcoal, but made from residues from agriculture. So for example, if you would harvest your corn, there would be some stalks left that you then would pyrolyze, and then you obtain some kind of charcoal, let's say. And this material, this black material, is very reactive. Let's say it has a lot of active compound or surface, let's say, and it can exchange with a lot of fertilizers and things like that in the soil. And so the idea with this biochar is that you add organic material to the soil from waste, actually, that would otherwise be burned or thrown away, and that you actually create fertilizers that are retained longer in the soil. So you would then apply normal fertilizer, but these biochar would keep it longer. But the problem with this material is that if you apply it, it's something which is, in the beginning, it has some properties, but you can imagine that it's some kind of organic material that you put in the soil for 100 years. And so we don't have any idea what will happen with which reactions will take place at the surface of this kind of material. It's made from different types of waste also. It's from residues, but from wood also, from even worse things. So if you put it into the soil on agricultural land, you would want to know, is it polluting maybe at the long term or not, or is it maybe at some point restraining the release of fertilizer or things like that. And so the idea that we had is that in Belgium, you typically have something, I should have put a map, I didn't realize that I'm so far away from you. We have this kind of thing that in the industrial time, charcoal was made, just they cut trees, and they made small ovens directly there in the forest. So we have this kind of round spots where all these kind of ovens were, and this is actually the same as biochar. So we have 150-year-old biochar in fields because now the trees are gone and it's used for agriculture. And so this is what we, in this project, we do. And we do a multi-scale approach with people really from biogeochemistry. There's us with the geophysics. We try to see how soil structure and root water uptake is changing in these biochar patches and the reference soil without any biochar. And there's people with remote sensing. So if you
do you have like a whole history, like a time scale for these things, like some that are 150 years old, 100,
we have
75? You know,
that exists, but not in our field. But to solve that, what we did is we made the same biochar now, and we applied it to the field. So we have also young biochar spots. But yeah, they behave completely different because you apply it in the surface, you have to plow and so on. Yeah. If you want to know about that, you could do another thing. Then today I will talk about potential. That's the data that I would like to work on because the postdoc that did the measurements stopped the project earlier than the end. So that's what I would like to profit from all the data we have. And there the objective was to look at spatial variability in the field and optimize fertilization, but also irrigation in potato fields. I will explain later. And then there is a project starting now on phosphorus fertilization in Morocco, where we also use some geophysics to improve that. So the project I want to talk about is this. Typically in Belgium, we don't have a lot of irrigation. I don't know about Canada. Do you irrigate fields here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for potato, that's mainly in the region where we have sandy soil, so water goes through quite quickly. And so in summer, there are more and more stresses because we experience more and more droughts. So people are starting to irrigate. And typically it's very basic with this kind of rotating things. So the project is about how can we optimize irrigation in space and time in terms of water resources, water use efficiency, but also the nitrogen, because it's also an issue. Where do you put it? When do you put it? And do you put everywhere the same amount, or should you adapt to heterogeneities in the soil? This is classical questions in a lot of studies right now, or even already for 20 years, I would say. So the idea of this project is how can we better engage with spatio-temporal variation in the field? And here you can see the field where we did the measurements. You can see just an aerial picture with a drone. And you directly see that there is variation, that there is spots in this field where the plant is not growing or not growing so well. And so, yeah, there is probably something we can do better here to have better yields or to manage at least some spots better in the field than what we do now. So the idea of the project is, okay, we have typically 3 sources of information there. You could work with sampling, soil sampling, or put some sensors at some spots in the field. But that remains very small scale. Then you have typical things that are more and more done, but yeah, it's still quite, only the farmers that really are interested in this do that, but you could do soil scanning, something like EMI, so make a map, connectivity map of your field, and then try to make different zones out of that. Or more and more, of course, people use satellite data or drone data and calculate indices from them, and then try to manage the field. And so our idea here in the project is we do all of this at different research groups. It's a European project. And so we are in the middle, of course, but we try to see, okay, which is the most relevant information for a farmer also. So not only, okay, what is interesting as a scientist, because yeah, it's of course interesting to look at an EMI map and see is it related to soil moisture, but that maybe does not help the farmer. He might not be able to make such a map when it's too complicated or processing takes too much time. So we try to find out also which type of information has the most content, also information content for a farmer, and is most relevant for him and also easiest accessible. So, for example, this is drone data, this is satellite data, sorry, at different dates in Europe. We now have the Sentinel data, so that's for free, and you get, at least every few days, you can get this type of data, which has 1 meter resolution. So that's, yeah, it's huge. It's a huge leap forward for agriculture. But you can see that you see different patterns at different dates, of course, and yeah, okay. What you see here mainly is plant-related information. You measure how the crop is doing.
Is this data at a single frequency or something that they're looking at?
This Sentinel has different, they have different sensors. I think this is just from the hyperspectral cameras that they, or yeah, I don't know what exactly they use to, but this is hyperspectral information. But you also have some radar, you have different sensors on the 2 Sentinel satellites. So this is only one index. We have tons of them actually in the group. They calculated, yeah. This is F cover, so this only tells you how much the field is covered in green, or you can calculate whatever you want, but you also have these kind of stress indices that come from infrared or things like that. But the other point is, okay, that's what the plant has, but often that comes late. When there is a stress, you will be too late. You might want to know before how to manage your field, not to get the plant into a stress that you then see in the images. So the other idea is then, okay, with EMI data, maybe we could just find different zones in the field and know how to manage them beforehand. Because that would be the soil-related information, which is related directly to soil moisture and fertilizer. So yeah, it's a different perspective. Do you start from the plant? Do you start from the soil? And so this is, for example, multi-coil EMI data. That's, for example, one thing I would like to do in SimPEG is to know how to invert this kind of data. We have here a 6-coil device with 3 VCP and 6 HCP modes that were measured. So it would be interesting for me to know how you deal with such kind of information. Maybe to find, for example, different soil layers or
things like that. Are those multi-frequency?
I think so, but these are questions I should dig into because I did not take the measurements myself. So these are multi-frequency, but I have no idea which frequencies and so on. Yes. But still, there's something here now. What's that? Can I do exit? You think no?
Oh, that's move away. Yeah, just
move away.
Like move your mouse out.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So what we have in this field, for example, is probably some craters from the World War II. That's what the farmer was saying. He thinks there were some bombs, actually, that fell in this field, and that some of these small spots are actually related to where these bombs were
I mean, you could potentially see the bombs too.
Yeah, but the bombs are probably already out because otherwise you would not be plowing. But but still, it could happen. In West Flanders, it's typically
we spent a lot of years in doing unexploded ordnance. So there's a lot of them around. So
yeah. But anyway, I hope there were no bombs.
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's more farmers per year that get killed in France because of unexploded
in Belgium
ordnance.
too. Yeah. They have to instruct Polish people that come work in summer about that. Actually, there's
But anyway, you're going to say they only allow the Poles to come in and do the plowing.
But I mean, there's actual trainings about how to deal with that. Yeah, you're right. So okay, so that's the type of data we have, and the question that we had scientifically behind that, because there's this whole agricultural thing, but maybe at the bottom of that, there's something that I find also very interesting is. Okay, is there a clear relationship between EMI data, so the ECA we get from EMI, or maybe the inverted EC?
So what was the EC?
This was ECA, so not inverted.
No, but EC?
So, electrical conductivity.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah. And soil moisture, because that's what we, for irrigation, that's what
that is not, that's not what I've ever seen EC ever used.
Okay, and what do you use then?
Well, I guess most is conduct. Yeah, we call it apparent conductivity, or
it's apparent.
Yeah.
So what's the symbol you use? C or what?
But here you use all your frequencies to complete one apparent resistivity or apparent conductivity, right?
Yeah, but that's what I don't know, whether we have this multiple frequency thing or so. You could have this, because we have susceptibilities too, so we should have. Yeah, I don't know. I will check.
That's fine. I lost touch of what.
So it's just apparent conductivity, And so here what you see is just a correlation. It's not from our work, but from another paper in Europe where they tried to find the petrophysical relationship between soil moisture and ECA from EMI. Which of course not only depends on soil moisture, also salinity and so on. But in our situation, salinity is only minor changes and so on. So the biggest change should come from soil moisture actually, after you have corrected for temperature.
And bombs.
And bombs, yeah. But the point is that in some papers they say, it's like for ERT you find a clear relationship between the two, and so you can convert EC to soil moisture. And clearly here you see this is for different dates. This is not at all a stable relationship, and it's certainly not always the same relationship. So the point we had here also in the project is to try to see, okay, is EMI or temporal EMI a good proxy for soil moisture in the field actually, because in this paper, clearly they show it's not a good proxy. So that was a bit.
So what actually are we looking? So the different dots, different colored dots correspond.
These are just at different spots in this study. It's a totally different study. I just took this image from a paper that showed the different colors are different places in the same field actually with different properties.
I see. So
and the dates are the columns.
The vertical axis, what is it?
That's the soil moisture.
So you got soil moisture against conductivity, okay.
Yeah.
And then the dots are just different places.
Yeah, so they took samples and they actually checked physically, gravimetrically, what was the soil moisture, and they put it against the measured conductivity there. And in some cases, you will really find people that claim, okay, this is always a straight line, or this is an easy relationship, at least not a linear relationship, but yeah.
One of them is actually negative relationship.
Yeah, so it's completely not robust here. So the issue, what we wanted to do, and that's why I'm here actually with all my data is, so we want to know whether EMI can be used in a spatio-temporal way in an agricultural context. Does that make sense? Is it a valuable proxy for soil moisture? Can it be? So is there maybe, like with ERT, we know it's possible. We already did it several times, but that's not practical for a farmer. So maybe if we could calibrate with ERT, is that a stable relationship? What's the problem here actually? Because I don't understand why ERT connectivity should be stable and EMI should not be. Probably you have much more ideas on that because I don't know EMI very well, but so we'll probably talk about that. So how to calibrate this petrophysical relationship then for EMI? What's the influence of the growing plants? Because of course, you can do once a map, but if you repeat a map on an agricultural field, the problem is that the plants are growing, and as EMI is a surface measurement, the plants are probably playing a role. What's the influence of microtopography on a field? Also with EMI, I don't know very well, but how that's, the fact that you have ridges and furrows, does it affect how you measure? And then, so what we did to be able to calibrate this, we did also in each of the different zones in the field some ERT. So we have ERT and EMI transects also all the time, several times time. We have normal reciprocal measurements. There again, some questions for the ERT. It seems easy, but it's of course a 3D current flow with this strange ridge and furrow. So we put transects, for example, on the ridge. But then your current flow is 3D, of course, because you don't have a flat surface. So how does this, how should you invert that in a smart way?
So what depth are you really interested in from the point of view of moisture?
Maximum 1.5 meter, 2 meters.
And then it looked like those furrows were,
I'll show you. It's
6 or 8 inches or something.
20 centimeters only, But our electrodes.
Well, that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's big
compared to a meter.
Yeah, that's the point. So there we come to questions of, is it necessary? I don't know whether SimPEG is able to do that, but to model the electrodes in this system or not. And so, are we finally able with ERT also to measure plant water uptake, or is it are there just too many errors from all these other things like the topography, plants, stuff like that? So to show you what we did, this is my data. So this is the field, and you can see there, the picture is the aerial photograph. So we have this zone that is brown. But on EMI, that's below. You don't see actually this brown zone, but you see another zone which is green in the aerial photograph, but clearly different in terms of apparent conductivity. So we designated different zones, let's say, 4 different zones where we put ERT transects.
Can we just go through that a little bit more carefully?
What's picture C?
Do we have a...
This is the same, that's the zoom. No, sorry, that's a different date, I think, when the field was bare. Yeah, that's your plans.
Yeah, very much.
So,
okay, so let's just
here's
take us through. So you've got A, so you've got this bare patch that's in the middle, so you're kind of interested in that, right?
Which is zoomed here, So we have one ERT transect. We always measured on the ridge and in the furrow because we also were interested to know whether ERT, what worked best actually on the furrow in the ridge. And so we have one zone here, that's the first one that you indicate, where we put transects. But then we wanted to know that this seems to be a different zone, so we prolonged one to have the whole transition also. And then if you go to D, you can see that this is exactly the same portion of the field, but here you see the EMI data. And you see that here actually there is some strange thing with the EC going on. You see, there is some...
No, just a sec.
So the mouse is a bit slow, but So here, if this is the EMI, you see exactly the same thing as in B, but with EMI data below. And so the brown spot here is not really very visible. It's a bit, you see it a bit in the EC, but not so much. But you have a different spot here that we don't see much in the vegetation, actually. But there's something with the soil properties there, at least.
So the purple is really like conductive or something?
The purple is the... Can you show this here? No.
Like 1 to 2?
It's the lowest conductivity, actually. And then green,
so
yellow is highest conductivity.
Yeah. So the purple is low conductivity, so it's resistive.
Yeah.
And
so probably it could be compacted area, for example.
Yeah, but you might expect that
you see something in the plants.
Something that is it's very resistive. Maybe it doesn't have very, has low conductivity, and maybe that correlates with the fact that plants are dying. There's not much moisture, so at least some part of the purple kind of coincides, but the purple also goes
so that's
inland.
So that's why we have these 4 zones actually with different transects to see, why do we see differences here in plants or in soil? And we did this over time, I think something like 17 times. So here you see just the time frequency. So we left the electrodes and the cables in the field, and we just came back every so and so time. So more or less bi-weekly, I think, if I remember well, during the whole growing season. So from bare soil up till harvest.
And you have moisture too? Did you guys measure?
Yeah, we have sensors. I'll show that later. We put sensors close to these transects. So that's actually the yellow dots you will see there. At the yellow dots, there are places where we have sensors.
So what's the difference between C and D?
I think, if I remember well, this is just the same image, but the first one is with vegetation and C is without vegetation. So this is just the soil has different colors also at these places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But we'll probably go much more into detail.
Hi, Sagi.
Hi, Doc. Sorry for being late.
So this is the soil we're looking at. I just wanted to show you because what we typically have there is it's an artificial, it's a human-made soil, we call that. So during history, what they did, they always put animal organic material on top of this sandy soil, which was basically infertile. And so that caused this 40 centimeter thick organic sand, actually. So it's sand mixed with litter from animals for hundreds of years.
Okay.
Which made this kind of human-made soil. And below you see a podzol, which is a type of very weathered sandy soil, which is quite acid.
Nice. So basically, if they hadn't put human man-made soil up there, you wouldn't have very much.
No, but what was there was forest with heat, this kind of small flowers. Or heather, yeah, probably. But anyways, yeah, it's just normally agriculture would not have been possible if it was not actively amended by human beings for a long time. Yeah. And so the electrodes, if they were in the ridge, what we did is we made some electrodes that were isolated, insulated with some. So they are in further than that they are actually conductive. So the black part, we put some coating around so that it's not in touch with the soil, so that we really put it inside. Because the problem with these ridges is that you have a lot of erosion, and we were afraid that if we would put it only in the surface, it would become unstable, and then, yeah.
Right, so the electrode is long, you've got the top part of it that's insulated, and then you've got an extensive part that is not insulated.
Yeah. And right now, how we did it to invert it with pi Gimli is we just saw it again as a point electrode, which is at 0.6 of the length that is exposed. But this is, of course, not ideal.
No, I mean, actually, so there's been a fair bit of work that's been done here recently. Lindsay was doing a lot.
So, yeah, I think this is an issue.
Extended electrodes, right? So there's actually current that's going to leak out the whole way. And, in this kind of a geometry, that might actually be
so I'd be interested to read her work then if you have some information about it. And so if you're in the furrow, then we just put it from the surface, but the same length as for the ones which are in the ridge.
Okay.
So this is, before starting even in the field, we did some modeling work because I was very concerned with the effect of the uncertainties we have on the microtopography. So we did in all directions, some modeling work on, okay, what would happen if this ridge would erode, for example, 2-3 centimeters would remove over time because of rain and soil going away. So which error would we make if we don't put that into the ERT mesh every time? Because probably the farmer is not going to, we didn't even measure every time we went there, we didn't measure the topography. So, and the issue is with that, when we looked at that, actually, that we create exactly the same patterns as what we want to see from ruler uptake, for example. If you would have a plant taking up water in the ridge, you would expect like this kind of red zone appearing in the middle of the ridge, which we would interpret as a ruler uptake bulb. And well, the errors you make because of microtopography look exactly the same as these things. And so it's really dangerous, actually, because you could interpret things totally wrong. Right. So that's why we decided not to take these transversal transects, because they are the worst, actually. The smallest error becomes problematic in this type of setup. So this kind of exercise I would probably also try to do in SimPEG to get to know the model. We did some work on the data errors. We can work on that later. This is just a reciprocal error in time for different dates. And so this would be the time-lapse inversions of one of the transects. Where you can still see that without working so much on it, we already have some artifacts sometimes, of course, here. but you do have something stable. You see a drying front. So yeah, I would like to work on this type of time-lapse stuff with our data in SimPEG.
Sorry, when you say resistivity change,
yeah,
what do you mean by that? Is that like an absolute value of resistivity, or is it?
It's the ratio, I think, in this case. Yeah, so it's actually this always.
Sarah, are you inverting all of them together?
Yeah, that's what we did now, but yeah, it's always a tricky thing in other studies. Sometimes I prefer not to use the time-lapse because the constraint then in time is often smoothing a lot what's happening, and then I wasn't always so much convinced of the advantage, but yeah. That's another question, huh? So time-lapse or not, and which constraint in time. I don't know whether you have worked a lot on that with SimPEG too.
So Sarah, like, are you putting some sort of smooth constraint in time direction? Is that what you're doing?
I think in this thing it's an L1 in time. But in PyGimli, we now have recently, they added the option of trying 3 or 4 different constraints in time. So I don't know what exactly Gael did here, but I think he told me L1 in time. But anyway, this is just to show you what I want to do. This is this was the first trial he did, and this is only flat. So again, then we have to, of course, in the inversion, we have to have a 3D mesh, so something like this. So this is actually the horizontal case where we did one trial with a master student after. So you had first a measurement before an irrigation. That's the first graph. The second graph is a difference then. So the delta again, and the third two. But so the middle one is just after irrigation, and then the last one is 1 day after irrigation. Just to show you that we do see where water infiltrates. We do see that it disappears by capillarity then afterwards and so on. But for me, there's a lot of technical issues to get first a good inversion with this ERT stuff, because even for the 2D transects on the ridges, we need the forward model to be 3D. Because the current is quite complex, and then how to constrain the domain and so on. So these are things to work on.
So when you say irrigation, it's just water that's coming down, basically from the tap.
So it's big beam that is
So it's just like a big rain. So then kind of flow down to
that's really what happens.
Be in troughs.
And even it's mainly the plant that capture the leaves that capture, and so it's going to the ridges directly. Actually, not very efficient. Then for EMI, we did it next to the ERT, so always minimum 1 meter apart from the ERT lines, and then covering all the heterogeneities. Because I didn't want only a map, I wanted to see how the EMI was reacting also in time. And so here it's fairly, we just made something ourselves from Plumbury stuff to pull over the ridges, and the EMI device is there in one of the legs. The other leg is to stabilize. And so we pulled it from one side of the field to the other side, actually, at 4 representative places. So that we would cover some of the basic features that are in the initial map, also throughout time.
So is your transmitter part of the square tubing on this at the top?
So everything is in this
transmitter.
Where's my mouse here? So everything is in here, actually. And this is just the GPS antenna on top. But you don't see my mouse anymore now?
No.
It doesn't appear. Well, so it's there. So that's the antenna there, actually, on top of the GPS only. But if you go to the ridge, to the furrow, down to the furrow, there. That's the device. It has the receiver and the transmitter. It's the CMD Mini Explorer. CMD Mini Explorer. It has it's a 3-coil device, but fairly small coil distances, of course.
Hey Sarah, your screen just dropped off, so I think we lost your video.
What dropped off?
The screen share. It looks like the internet just cut out for a second, so it dropped your the screen share.
Yeah. I'm taking fairly long time to explain all this story.
No, this is good, right? I mean,
But at least you will have it once, and I won't have to bother you anymore with it.
One other question while it's coming back up. In your resistivity images with the irrigation example, the water actually is resistive. Is that the case, or is the water?
The water is groundwater, so it's quite resistive, but it contains also some iron. So I'm not. You should actually also analyze that once in the lab to see what exactly the effect is. The water has really a red color. So normally it should be resistive. Groundwater is much more resistant than the water in the soil, but in this case, I should double check with some. We actually took some course already to do some petrophysics in the lab. Cool. So am I back on? No, I don't manage to do that. The other room is not working.
Maybe try to screen share again.
Yeah, it's okay. It was either room that did not want me anymore. Do I have to connect again here?
I think you're still in. You're still in.
Okay.
You just need to share again.
So, do you see me again?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see it?
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just to show you from the side, so this is how it works. It's really like, we just said at the end of the project, if you have to do this one more time in a season, we'll buy a donkey. So it was really hard actually. When the plants are there, it's hard work. So yeah, so we did already some work to just validate what we had there. For example, here you see a transect of ERT together with a transect of EMI. ERT is the blue dots. And the EMI data, we would then have selected the cells that are corresponding to the EMI mesh actually, so to have some sort of average comparison. And you can see that we do capture the same heterogeneities, but that there are some differences also. So this is also something I might want to discuss at some point with the people that know.
When you do the ERT, what sort of electrode spacing and geometry do you have?
So in our case, it was 25 centimeter spacing.
So a whole bunch of electrodes, and then some are currents and some are potentials, or
this is a dipole and a gradient array mixed, I think. Yeah.
And then the whole length of that?
The whole length of that was, if I'm not mistaken, 30 meters, something like that.
Oh, so you're actually seeing potentially pretty deep.
No, because we did not, and it would take a day to measure everything. So we did not select the very big distances. We only selected up till, I think, 2 or 3 meters.
Okay.
But we could, of course, yeah, you could, but this was not the aim at all. So.
No, but I was just wondering about when you're trying to compare ERT and EMI.
Yeah. But this EM is also very short. It's 30 centimeter coil distance, I think, or something like that. So
right, but so if you've got really small coil distances, then maybe you're only seeing a fraction of that for depth, right? But if your ERT is much bigger or different, and then if you're just somehow looking at apparent resistivities, then they could.
I don't know, but this is not apparent anymore.
So these have been inverted.
I think the ERT is inverted and then compared to ECA. Which is of course a bit tricky because EMI is not inverted. So, but yeah, it's a volume average, let's say.
Okay.
But at least I was already happy that we found the same structures. And then just coming to the sensors, so we do have some validation for the petrophysics. We have at different depths and at different places under this microtopography. We have soil moisture, temperature, and EC normally. Measured. So up till, what do we see there? 160 centimeters, we have different sensors at different places. So we can validate some of the petrophysics then or we can at least use that to calibrate we have some kind of field petrophysical relationship.
What did you use for positioning?
Sorry?
Positioning for locating all your data.
Yeah, that we used an RTK GPS. Yeah. And just to give you an idea, so this is, for example, soil moisture sensors. We do see some which react very strongly to an irrigation event. For example, here you see these peaks. So the sensors are directly reacting to irrigation, but others have strange behavior where, for example, you only see some slow buildup, which is probably because the water is taking preferential pathways and then by capillarity going to some other spots. So which is interesting because we can see different behaviors and also in the geophysical data. So yeah, here you can see my list of tasks to do in the 6 months that I'm here. So first of all, be able to import all these data in Python, but also then to transform it to the data format that I need to be working in SimPEG. Process these data, so look at errors and things like that. Also distributions, to do 3D and 2D meshing for the forward and inverse modeling in SimPEG. And then in terms of EMI, so import this 6-core EMI and invert it. But there I would actually also on the physics, I could use some of your expertise. I'm only a beginner in working with EMI. So these frequency stuff and so on, you probably can tell me a lot more about what's in the data than I know at the moment. And then my final goal would be then with a postdoc also from Julik, who is also working with this EMI stuff, to look at, actually what they do now is calibrate the EMI with ERT traditionally in Julik. So they do ERT sounding before they do their EMI mapping. And so I would like to see, okay, how is this relationship stable? Is ERT really useful for EMI, or is it, because a lot of people actually have criticized that. Is ERT really the standard to calibrate EMI? That's a bit strange, maybe. Yeah. For me, I always found it strange that I do that, but I'm not a specialist. So anyway, so yeah, that's the final goal to be able to understand.
When you say to calibrate, do you know what they're actually referring to?
They really shift. They make some kind of calibration function based on the conductivities of ERT, and they use that to rescale the conductivities of the EMI.
There's a lot of new things that you just brought up here.
Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great.
So that's it for me.
Sarah, can you go back to slide 21?
Yeah, I just stopped the sharing. Yeah, I can go back.
That there, like you mentioned, conductive and resistive region. Is that the hydraulic conductivity or electrical conductivity?
Electrical conductivity. So my postdoc put before dry and wet, but I'm not even sure this is referring to dry and wet zones. I think it's rather related to maybe also compaction or even different soil materials. So I prefer to still put at the moment electrical conductivity and electrical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So I guess the first step, or at least one of the first steps, is to be able to import both of your data sets, both the EMI and the ERT, into Python, SimPEG,
and start working with it.
Right? First, we just see what we're looking at.
Indeed. Yeah.
So what is the unit of the data in EMI?
The unit of the data is, I think it's millisieverts, where I should look at the per meter or something like that.
Oh, so it's like a kind of apparent conductivity?
Yeah, millisiemens per meter, yeah.
But can you transfer that into a magnetic field or a voltage, or kind of, do you know what is the relationship they use?
No, actually not. This is this whole equation there. I should look up how they actually did that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually the required process to input those data into SimPEG code, because it doesn't really.
I do have the raw data file, so I have voltages, I have everything.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I don't know by heart what they all did to process and come to this ECA.
Okay, and this is the frequency domain system.
That's the question that Doug had. I don't know at which frequency. It's a multi-frequency device.
I just looked on their website and it wasn't immediately apparent what the frequencies were.
So I looked it up this morning already. So it says between 100 and a few megahertz. But
so it'll be in there. Yeah. Dig it up. Yeah. Actually, I've never heard of that particular company.
It's Czech. It's a small company, but actually it's what we found. Now a lot of people in Europe are working with it because it's much more stable than this GeoSci.xyz device, which had a drift all the time when we used that on the field. And
yeah. So do you think that it has like a high quality info Well, I think that's
8.
usually the problem, I guess.
I did not hear the sentence well. Sorry, can you repeat?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
So usually the problem is like a low quality in-phase data, I guess, as far as I know. It's like that's where people usually do the calibration.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Do you think like this system actually have high quality in-phase data?
They interfere.
And then you wouldn't have to calibrate. That's your point.
Yeah, I'm just asking. Like, do you think?
I must say this is a specialty of the postdoc that is working with me on this project. So his whole PhD was about calibrating EMI for agricultural and environmental applications. So I should look up all that before I start working with it. But I mean, what I always find strange is that in these geological applications, you don't do all this stuff. And then if I read all these papers on agriculture, they have to do this, or they do this stuff. I don't know whether they have to do, or it's because the communities are not connected and not sharing their knowledge. I don't know, but yeah.
So this is great. You can get a chance to just start right at the absolute very basics.
For the EMI, yeah, that's really ERT. I can take care. I think of once I know how to import it, it will work. But for EMI, I need some more information.
So, sorry, Sarah. This is Kevin. Just the postdoc you're talking about, is it Christian from
Christian? Yeah, and Christian will be available for this project also from April onwards. So we will be connected all the time.
Okay, I see. Because when I was an intern there, I did some field surveys with them, and at the time they were using, I think, a single frequency multi-offset EMI device.
Okay,
so I'm not sure if they changed it since then, but
it's probably the same one then. Yeah. When was that, Soggy?
That was a few years ago.
Kevin.
Okay. Yeah. Then it's probably the same one. Yeah.
Okay.
This is great. This has got a lot of really nice ranges to it. There's a lot of really kind of fundamental stuff
questions
that's here, and you're in a small scale, but really. Everything is scalable. So you're working on a small scale or a big scale doesn't really make that much difference. And there's just a lot of complications that are coming in here. Because you are small scale, temperature effects and micro changes in what is being irrigated, and all the topography. It's a very rich problem, which makes it very interesting.
It's just short.
So how's the voting in time? Because Vahid would like to show his slides. He needs about 10 minutes. It depends if you guys are short in time or if we can keep going. So he says yes, and what do you say?
Well, I think we should probably wait till next week because otherwise you just show that slides. We don't really have time to talk. They're just the same as Sarah was talking. She puts up a slide saying, "Well, this is really quick," but then we don't know this, we don't know that. So let's take it a bit slower and digest it. I think that's
a good idea. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Next one.
Yeah. So Sarah, one of the suggestions for DC, I think we could start with 2D using a plot tree.
Yeah. Because actually, what I would like to start with, maybe it's not the most beautiful, but the simplest. The master student that did the transversal transect, so with all the microtopography in it, on the one irrigation event, actually, if we would be able to invert that data again, like I did with PyGimli, but I still had to work there was quite a large RMSE left, so the fit was not very well in these first inversions. So I had to still work on the processing and the inversion. So if we could do that, I think we could fairly quickly even have a paper out of it, because he already structured everything. So that would be nice actually as a starter, and it's the least difficult, I think, to invert because it stays a 2D case.
Sounds good. Yeah. So if you have like a sketch of the, like topographies and the electro spacing and stuff, I think we can potentially help to set things up for you.
I think that's, for me, that's after being able to import the data, that's the second issue I'm going to face. That is how to set up a good mesh. Because that's quite different, I think, in SimPEG. I'm used to working with these unstructured meshes. So these are tetrahedral meshes. And so I think it works differently, but yeah, if you could give me some hints on the website, or I saw that's mainly flat cases actually in the example, so I need some information on how to set up topography.
There is a topography one, I guess, in
Okay.
the example. Yeah,
So
but it's yeah, like it's a tensor mesh, 2D, but yeah, you can start from simple one, which is tensor one, then kind of build a little bit complicated mesh like quad-tree style.
Yeah. Okay.
One other thing, I don't mean to like derail examples, but that you can keep in mind as well is there is actually a curvilinear mesh in SimPEG.
Right.
We don't have many examples with it, but it might be worth exploring for some of these problems where you really do actually want to capture some of this fine scale topography. And that's something that like we'd all be very excited to see more use cases and reasons to be using that mesh.
Okay.
So I don't
try the different options then, let's say, and probably with your help, but I'll try the different options and see what gives us the best results.
Yeah, like don't use that as your first example. Use the mesh and the octree maybe. But down the road, if that's something you want to explore, like feel free to ping and we can try and make that happen.
Well, I think it's fairly important. I could even just use the for modeling where we did some synthetic data for that, because to see the mesh quality, it's maybe better to first work with synthetic data and then. So we have all this actually, this is the real data, but we have all this also with the hydrological model where we simulated water uptake.
Oh, that's
cool. And so on. So I have just the data in terms of soil moisture in a model that we could then use to test all of this stuff actually first. That's what we did with the topography also. So.
Yeah. Can you come back to the issue of 2D? I wasn't quite sure when you said working on the 2D problem.
Yes.
What were you thinking about? Because you do have,
yeah.
If you look in Transect, you've got 2D, right?
Yeah.
But your data are actually.
But I also have these strands, so that's what I was saying.
Oh,
so I would start maybe with,
yeah,
that's it. The one of the irrigation events is the only one which we have like this.
Okay.
I would start with that one because I think that's the simplest.
So then you've really got a lot of topography on the electrodes, right?
And that, in terms of errors, that's the worst. So I think the data will be the worst in that one, but it's easiest to learn to work with SimPEG, I think.
Understood. Yep. Okay.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.
Okay. So was there? Talk to the chairman here, the chairperson, chair they. Lindsay, you have any comments?
Oh, I'm not the chairperson of this meeting. I showed up late. Dom or Thibaut are. I do have a couple like quick.
Well, we lost you.
Oh, am I still there?
You had a couple of quick. That was it.
Okay. Comments. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Thibaut and say thanks for all of his work on working on this pull request for the Gravity notebooks. There's 2 of them with DQuant students. So it's really exciting to see that progressing and coming in, and I think they'll be valuable resources for all of us. So shout out to Thibaut and to DQuant student, which I don't actually remember his name. Thibaut, do you know his name?
No, he used 2 different pseudonym online, but none of them are his real name, so I don't know.
He's an anonymous, wonderful student who's been pushing on all this stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this might be a nice communication channel or something to think about, we have the This Week channel on Slack. And so what that is we've used it to post like an image and a few bullet points of just like something interesting that you've done this week. And so it's kind of a nice way to just show like, hey, I'm making progress on things. And it's also like, I think a nice sort of like self-accountability thing is making sure you actually do something every week. And so I was wondering if this is something that people would be interested in sort of reviving. Like there's no requirement they have to post every week. If you post once, like you can post every time you have something interesting to share. And then what we've done is just assembled that into a quick blog that's like, this is what's going on in SimPEG this week. So if people are interested in that, feel free to like post some things there. That would be awesome to see. If not, that's fine. But I wanted to toss that out there.
I'll try. I think it's not a bad thing to try to make some trace of what we're doing, because otherwise, academics, it's always like you're never reaching the goal you're actually putting for yourself. So a this week goal is great.
Well, it also shares what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll hand it back to Dom and Thibaut who are leading things there.
Well, I don't think of any other point to tackle today. Is there anybody with any more comments or subject they want to raise, or like also ideas for next week? Like next week, we're gonna have a presentation, then with a lot of questions, etc. But is there other things going on that we should tackle?
I'll talk a little bit about the inverse theory course next week.
Okay.
So between Vahid and what I want to say about Argentina and how we're structuring things.
Anything about the discretized documentation too? You want to say, Lindsay?
That's sort of been sitting there. It's on a list of things to do. If people want to actually just take a look at the website, the link that's in that pull request, that would be great. Feel free to provide any feedback. And hopefully we can get that in next week. There were still a couple things to sort out with respect to testing. So it's not quite ready to go, but any feedback at this point would be valuable.
Did I see too that Bain's pull request for the digitalization was ready to go?
I believe so. I just needed to follow up with him. There were some questions about how the testing was being done, and how the docs are being built.
Okay.
But I think it's basically ready to go. So that should be in this week, which is super exciting.
Nice.
Yes, if you guys haven't tried that, yeah, I definitely recommend to try it. It's actually pretty cool. So that GTKI stuff.
What is that?
That's the visualization we saw last week, I believe.
Yeah,
like all the 3D,
I want to
etc.
try it for sure.
Yeah, so that was on the pull request. So that's gonna be in the main distribution very soon. But right now it's on the development branch.
I'll probably try it later.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So
Thank you.
thanks everyone.
Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.